Saturday View on Midlands 103. With thanks to Lumclean Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcleanEnergy.com. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
Hello and a very good morning to you all. It's Saturday the 1st of June. I'm Ronan Berry and it's time for you to have your Saturday View on what is a glorious morning weather-wise right across the Midlands. Coming up on today's show, traffic congestion and restrictions in Athlone. Is it driving shoppers to other towns like Ballinasloe, Roscommon, maybe even Mullingar, Tullamore? Well, that's the view of one local election candidate. We'll have a little reaction to that from Athlone Chamber of Commerce later. Also, society-wise, are we getting more agitated and angry? And are we getting more and more impatient year on year? And are you noticing that? Do you notice it as a member of the public? Do you notice it as a business owner? Do you work in the service industry? And do you notice people getting highly impatient too? Have we forgotten how to wait for things? Have we forgotten how to be mannerly? Well, I'm going to delve into that subject very, very shortly on the show. We'll be joined by some people from the retail sector, people who are in those public-facing roles and who deal with you and I all day, every day, and see, are they noticing any change in trends? Is it something that has been happening for quite a while? Or is it something that in a post-pandemic world has really escalated and is possibly making jobs more difficult? Is it something that could dissuade you from taking up a career in a certain sector because you would have to deal with public? And if we think there's so much talk as well about how younger generations now don't even want to take a phone call. They just want to deal by text or by email. Well, here's the thing for you. It's not just the younger people. I know plenty of people who, in the world of work after COVID and when working from home and hybrid working became a real thing, actually prefer to just go by text or email and even schedule phone calls, which really is kind of a complete seismic shift from where we were before the pandemic. But is all of that leading to people being more impatient and more angry? Let me know what you think. 083 3010 103 is the text and WhatsApp number. And let me know what makes you angry and why. Because let's face it, there are a range of issues out there. And from the very, very simple and trivial things that just maybe piss you off a little bit to stuff that makes you genuinely angry. The stuff that you will put to election candidates, be it for the European elections or the local elections as they come to your door, or as you see them canvassing around our towns, villages and cities and countryside. What are you putting to those people? And what response are you getting back? And is it really making you angry? Or what is it about it that makes you angry? So the text lines are open there. You can get us as well on the phone, 0818 300 103. Nellie is on the end of the phone as always out there and happy to take your call. But on that subject of elections, this year you'd notice in particular huge amounts of election posters right around our villages, towns and cities and countrysides. And I would have thought in 2024 we possibly may have seen the end of the traditional election poster and all those mugshots of people gurning down at us and smiling at us and everything, from ESB polls, from lampposts, from every opportune place there is to stick a poster. And over the years there's often been talk about, should we not just get rid of them and ban them because there's an environmental impact from them? There's obviously a huge cost of printing the posters too. And some towns and villages, their tidy towns committees have put restrictions on where posters can go. And certainly you could see a lot of merit in that if there were particular locations where each candidate could put a poster if they wished, rather than this kind of competition to get them on poles all over the place. But clearly, election posters are making a difference, and they are a way for somebody to get their face known, because when it comes to a ballot paper you'll see their pictures, and if you can't identify the person then that can be a challenge. That's particularly relevant in County Offaly because there are two Clare Murrays running in the same district in County Offaly, so a little draw had to be made as to who goes first on the ballot paper, but their names are spelt exactly the same way. Two different candidates, two different parties, so again you could see why having election posters might make a difference there. But let's try and dig a little bit deeper and take a different angle on this and try and look at what can we tell about candidates from their election posters. Have you ever wondered what the posters can actually reveal about the candidate beyond their slogans or maybe the party political line or the little logo or emblem from the party, which, if you remember over years, depending maybe on how well the party was doing in the opinion polls, the logo could be quite large on a poster or it could be quite succinct and hidden in the corner as well. Can we look at election posters and interpret and glean any information about that candidate, about their emotions and their personalities, and find any subtle clues that might be influencing our choices at the polls? Well, to look at this, I'm delighted to welcome a man who has spent a lifetime observing and understanding human behaviour. Joseph Maguire of Clearside Communication has helped countless individuals and teams communicate with clarity and authenticity. Joseph has over 35 years' experience in teaching the ancient art of face reading, and he's combined that also with advanced techniques from former FBI trainers, giving him a unique ability to read and analyse facial features, body language and communication styles. We're looking at those non-verbal communications that are a huge part of everything we do in all our communications. Joseph's also the author of Face Facts, The Art of Reading Your Clients and Prospects for Sales, Recruitment and Negotiation. And Joseph's going to shed some light on election posters. Very good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, Ronan.
Joseph, you have over 35 years' experience in face reading, but the actual art itself goes considerably further back.
Absolutely, yes. I'm not quite as old as all of that. What I primarily work with is an ancient Chinese tradition, which is at least 3,000 years old. The documentation goes back that far, and it has been used in Chinese business, Chinese medicine, Chinese politics for such an extended period of time. It's obviously been used much more recently as well, like you mentioned, the FBI, various law enforcement agencies. But interestingly, it's also been used in Hollywood for many years. And there are a lot of facial archetypes used in movies, even going back to animation, where it gives us a message that the faces are designed or the actors are chosen to give us a particular message about a character. And the thing is, we register faces in something like 1/17 of a second. And when we see a face, we tell ourselves a story about the person whose face we're looking at. And that could be accurate, but more often than not, it's probably based on our own history and our own biases. So we tell ourselves a story about whether we like the person, dislike the person, whether we've no feeling whatever about them, but it may have absolutely nothing to do with the person themselves. So a big part of what I'm about is helping people get beyond that initial perception, that initial bias, and look at what's actually going on, particularly in terms of helping people to connect and communicate and create relationship.
A lot of your work then would be with some large corporates and various size business too, maybe on interview panels and in that candidate selection process.
Yeah, interviews, and I also help with negotiation and then team training, particularly where around sales.
Fantastic. And so that's, again, you get the opportunity maybe to look at somebody face to face. So question, if you were handed a photograph then of candidates along with some detail on them, can you equally interpret from a photograph what you might also see face to face with them?
You get more face to face. Let's be quite realistic about that, because you're seeing facial expression, you're seeing body language, and particularly then if you get talking to them, the verbal cues will tell you a lot. But when just looking at a static facial photo will give you a lot of information. Now, obviously, we're talking in terms of election photos here, election posters, and it's interesting how many of them are so obviously photoshopped to give a certain impression of people. But it makes when the photo is photoshopped, it actually makes the person look quite bland, which is unfortunate because it removes an element of character.
Absolutely. And I remember a friend of mine from Dublin years back said to me that if you look like your passport photograph, there's probably something wrong with you, because there was such a kind of a false photograph with that sudden flash of light when you used to go into little booths as well. But I think definitely around the Midlands area, there are election posters that have been photoshopped to some regard, and some maybe quite heavily photoshopped as well. So let's just take that standard election poster. What can we tell about the candidate from that very first look, that split-second look at election poster as we're driving or walking past?
Yeah, we'll get an impression. And the thing, going back to what I was saying a moment ago, we will decide that we either like or dislike them almost instantly, regardless of who they actually are. Now, if I'm looking at a photo, then I'll be picking up a lot of personality traits, a lot of behavioural traits, even from a static photo. So, for example, if I look at somebody's eyebrows, their eyebrows will tell me a lot about how they communicate. So if the eyebrows are essentially straight, it tells me they're more linear thinkers, where if the eyebrows are more curved, these are more person-centered. If the eyebrows are very thin, These are people who like information presented in very small chunks. They don't like to be overloaded with information. So if you meet somebody with very thin eyebrows, don't talk too much to them. Allow them to tell you what they really want, what they really think. Otherwise, you're going to feel, or they're going to feel overloaded with whatever you're talking about.
That's fascinating. So the eyebrows, because people probably think initially it's the eyes that have it, but I guess we're in a flat picture rather than that three-dimensional representation of somebody. Beyond the eyebrows then, what other things can a face tell us? And as you say yourself, sometimes we're reading this unconsciously ourselves and we're forming an opinion. We just don't realise we're doing it. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing. When we begin to realise we're doing it, then we can step back from the biases, and we're all prone to bias. Like the work of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky have shown us that like we're prone to potentially up to 200 different forms of bias. So when we step back from the bias and actually take a fresh look, then we can see the person as opposed to our perception. If you mentioned the eyes a moment ago, the eyes actually are more revealing than anything else. And again, without looking at a photo, if the eyes are big and open, it tells us these are people who are guided primarily by feeling. So they're people who are very sensory. They're guided very much by emotion, how they feel about something. So even if you meet somebody with big open eyes, check how they are. How are you feeling today? Rather than getting into the business you want to talk about. Whereas if the eyes are very narrow, like I'm not sure if I don't know if it's a fact, but I did read some years ago that Donald Trump he has very narrowed eyes, that he actually deliberately developed that based on the Clint Eastwood character from the Dollars trilogy of movies, because he thought it made him look more clinical, more masculine.
Yeah, so I think you could have I think I'd have a slightly different opinion on that one myself, all right, in terms of what it makes them look like. But that's interesting because I suppose that's leading it then when it comes to election posters. And I suppose you wonder, are the bigger parties then, are they spending more money ensuring that candidates are caught in the more natural shot versus, if you're running for local election and you're an independent candidate, you really don't have the money. I think you can't even get a refund for anything that you run. So you're probably going with maybe a more homemade shot too. So political parties probably do look at this and curating that image that's going to at least tick all those boxes and give that first impression that makes someone go, yeah, I would give them a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting how many of the photos are actually really bland. A photographer friend of mine refers to the bridesmaid smile, where it's a social smile. You're smiling for the camera rather than showing a genuine smile. And that's one of the things that research has shown, that if we display a genuine smile, what's called the Duchenne smile, where our eyes are clearly smiling as well, that registers with people. That creates a very positive impression that we're likable, we're trustworthy. Whereas if the eyes are not smiling, it creates an unconscious feeling of, I'm not sure here. Yeah. So we need to be conscious of that. If we're having a public photo out there, then we need to make sure our eyes are seen to be smiling as well. But there are differences in cultures as well. For example, if you're in Asia, if you were a politician in Asia, you don't want to be seen smiling in a photo, or certainly not a poster, because that will give the impression that you're not serious.
Okay, that's interesting. So cross-culturally, there can be differences in it too. And I suppose ultimately, the posters, they're not going away, kind of borrow another political slogan, they're not going away just yet. We're seeing probably more of them this year than ever before, particularly with the European elections running as well. But really, we're probably going to see the posters there forever, because it is given that initial clue and that initial idea about somebody else. And nothing, I think, beats face-to-face, knocking on doors and actually meeting the people then.
That's where the impact is, because you have to connect, and people want to have their opinions heard. It's one of the basic human needs. We need to feel heard. So if you're knocking on somebody's door and you're giving them an opportunity to share their opinion, and even if it's to spew their opinion at you, they at least feel you've made the effort. So I was talking to an election candidate recently here, and she's had all sorts of reactions, but it's when you allow people that space to vent or to give their opinion, even whether it's constructive or otherwise, they feel heard and they're more open to engaging with you.
Joseph Maguire, an absolute pleasure, and thank you for those insights into the election posters. And I think based on that, as I say, we're going to see election posters being very much part of electoral campaigns for the next, for the foreseeable, because there was so much talk over the years of candidates just having an online presence, using social media. Actually, it seems more and more going back to that traditional thing of posters, knocking on doors, and you can't beat engaging with people. Thank you so much for that, Joseph, this morning, and fascinating insights as well. Joseph Maguire there from Clearside Communications. That book that I mentioned, Face Facts, that Joseph has written, you can go on to clearsidecommunications.com and you can actually place an order on it. It is a fascinating read, actually, and all those things Joseph mentioned there, those little cues you can look for, even down to the eyebrows. Imagine the skills. Imagine what that would be like if you could just grow that skill set yourself and start using that and in helping making those judgments, because we are making them anyway. As human beings, we make that split second, that first impression. We're doing it unconsciously. People like Joseph are trained to the highest level, though, in reading those kind of facial cues. Imagine if you could pick up a little bit on that and just test them out on your friends and family and even on work colleagues too. Could be a game changer for you. Thank you for all your texts coming in as well. I'm going to touch on the topic of anger and impatience after a short break, and then later on we'll talk about maybe growing anger in some parts of Athlone because shoppers are going to neighbouring towns to do their shopping because they're fed up with traffic delays and congestion.
Saturday View on Midlands 103 with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
And just to answer a text that came in there about the election posters around expenses, like if you Google there, you'll see loads of stuff around posters about vandalism and obstruction and, posters going missing and all the usual stuff that happens. But on the spending limits for elections and stuff like that, for local and Shannon elections, candidates cannot claim back their election expenses. Now, there are limits on what they can spend. So for a local electoral area, a population of over 35,000, the spending limit per candidate is 15,350. For 18,000 or less, it's 11,500, and a couple of little grades in between there too. But actually, according to that, they can't claim back expenses on those, which is quite interesting. I thought they could if they polled a certain amount, but if you know any different, please let me know. When it comes to the elections anyway, next Friday the 7th, we will be all going out to vote in our local and European elections, and we expect it'll be quite of a pleasant experience. We'll get through the queues quite quickly, get our vote cast and get out of there as well. No reason to get agitated or angry or stuff like that. Because apparently there are many, many reasons why people are getting angry, getting really, really impatient lately. And it can be a factor, particularly when it comes to business. And actually on Midlands Today last Wednesday, Will Faulkner was talking to Tom Nally of Rochford Superstore in Mullingar, and they just announced that they were basically shutting the bricks and mortar element of their business, I think later this month, and just concentrating on online offering. And there were many factors within that. It was a family decision, Tom Nally told Will. And one of the things he mentioned, though, was business is changing, and particularly when it comes to dealing with people and the public. Here's a little snippet of what Tom spoke about with Will on Wednesday.
I genuinely don't think so. I'm a very optimistic person, but especially since COVID, society has changed. And this, I just want to point out, this is not a criticism, but like people in general are brilliant. But there is people, I suppose, are kind of angry at the moment. It started off with COVID and then it went on to government and now it's immigration. There is a reticent kind of, I suppose, anger bubbling away there, and people are fed up. And like you'd hear that in the shop, and rightly so. A lot of them, there's an awful lot of stuff that need to change.
So Tom Nally is saying that there's a lot that needs to change, and I know there are many reasons why somebody might get angry. And some of you text in, one person has said the amount of junk mail they seem to be getting is making them angry and driving them mad as well. So it can be something relatively simple, or it can be something major, like Tom mentioned immigration there. There's multiple angles on that, why somebody might get angry. You might get angry because the borders appear to be open and we're letting people in unchecked. Or maybe you're angry that people are getting so angry about immigration, about people seeking a better future and more prosperity. There's many angles on all those subjects. Please, 083 3010 103, text and WhatsApp line is open. But let's see what this is like in public-facing roles. John Cusack, manager of the Bridge Shopping Centre in Tullamore. John.
Good morning, Ronan.
Are we getting more angry and impatient?
Most definitely, yes.
Really?
I suppose part of our jobs, you get to study people's behaviour over the years. And I was a doorman for a number of years as well. So one of the attributes that you had to have was tolerance. And I would have worked in a shop starting off on my day as well. So, yeah, and I think a lot of it is being blamed on the COVID. But in my own humble opinion, I think that mobile phone is the most single contributing factor to people's behaviour today. And I think from a very young age, youngsters are exposed to hatred and to phones and a lack of disrespect. And there are days that people are very angry, and we would notice it within the centre. If something particularly happens the night before and it's all across the television, the Late Late Show for argument's sake, if something topical comes up there, you will see that reciprocated over the next few days. The weather has a huge effect. And we were just chatting before I came on air, like what the match has done to people's attitude over the last week, and that scene with all the youngsters on the field. So there are several things, but I know I think the biggest single thing that we have forgot the basics of communication. Young people have forgot the basic of communication. Now, I get emails on a regular, and I won't answer an email that comes up, hey, yeah, H-E-Y-A. I won't answer an email that says, hey there. And I won't answer an email that somebody says, or just puts hello. And they are basic, fundamental things for me. And a lot of people don't want to communicate anymore. And like, hi, hello. And you get, like, I even say, you'd hear this thing, hiya. Like, look that up in the dictionary. It's not there.
Yeah,
There's
but
no such thing
I'm
as
going to
hiya.
counter-argue that one, because I find, and I said to somebody just recently, that WhatsApp has become like the new email for me. That somebody goes to you, God, I sent you a message yesterday, and you realise it's 37 messages down in your WhatsApp and you actually didn't get to see it or reply to it. Email has got less frequent and more informal. I actually like to see someone's going, hey Ronan, just want to ask something, rather than that crap of as per my previous mail, and you're just like, right, yeah, that passive aggressiveness, you're gone straight away. So maybe we're finding something that makes me angry. Thank you for your sentiments about the Offaly team as well, coming from a Laois man. But interesting, the role of mobile phones or post-pandemic, are things changing out there? Let's get the perspective of Bunbrosna's Pádraig Walsh. Pádraig's a behavioural specialist working with Actualise Academy. He's a wealth of experience working with families and individuals using positive behaviour supports and functional assessment to help people identify the factors that are contributing to challenging situations and to identify the messes behind our behaviour. Pádraig, would you tend to agree with John? Are we becoming a little bit more impatient and angrier?
So it's very funny that John mentioned mobile communications, because it was one of the things that I was thinking about before coming on this morning. And I work with, people of varying different generations, from us oldies or hitting 40 towards people who are older again. And then there's also this new generation of what's called Generation Z, and there may be people in their 20s. But you can almost predict how likely it is that somebody's going to answer the phone to you if you make a phone call, Ronan, by the age that they are. This is the formula that I use. So if there's somebody in their 50s, it's kind of 50% likely that they'll answer the phone because they might be busy doing something. But if they're in their 20s, you've got a kind of a 20% chance. You've got 1 in 5 chance that they're going to answer the phone because it's not seen as that device that you talk to somebody in real time. There are voice notes, and there's a very strong emphasis when I'm talking with somebody of that age group that you would stand on ceremony, that there would be a WhatsApp message and there would be a voice note, but you don't necessarily talk face to face, or you don't talk on the phone. And there's a social anxiety, perhaps, even just around that, which is fine in social situations. That's the norm of that generation. But where it becomes tricky is when you're trying to do business, where you're trying to get some work done, and it's cross-generational, and you need to have different ways of responding and different ways of communicating, and that it can't always be, like John was saying, an informal approach. There has to be some level of formality. But I'm with you on that. Interestingly enough, one of the things that also has emerged is this instant I won't say instant gratification, but instant responding that occurs to our needs. So you mentioned that impatience can be a factor, and Rochford has found that that's a factor. I was reading an article this week in Forbes magazine, which was talking about AI and its impact. And the article was how to improve your AI prompts with these simple pointers. So now, for anyone who doesn't know, artificial intelligence and things like ChatGPT can give you reams and reams of content, answers. You can ask it anything, and it can come up instantly with answers for you. You know, I could have basically done this interview this morning and said, look, I'm going on to talk with Ronan this morning about these changes. What should I be talking about? And it will give me instant answers, okay? But the article was saying how to improve your prompts, what to ask it, how to interact with it. And the very first pointer of the 20 things you can do was forget politeness. So that's an interesting way that our behavior is being shaped, our communications and our expectations are being shaped, that don't be polite with something. You know, my mum will often say, you know, those kind of hey Google speakers that you'll have say, hey Google, can you tell me this please, right? And this is just a device. But when we're talking about AI, the advice that is currently being given is forget politeness. Now that's grand if you're talking to a machine like your hey Google or your ChatGPTs. It's a whole different ballgame when you're trying to interact with somebody face-to-face, via text, via email, and politeness and courtesy and social intelligence are crucial when it comes to that human experience. So COVID happened, you know, the influx of AI, the reliance on technology, all have come together in this perfect storm, which have influenced that face-to-face communication and those interactions that happen in retail, in business, across all sorts of different settings.
And undoubtedly, a pandemic can, and we'll be needing to see if there's any sort of evidence coming out yet, kind of in the post-pandemic years. But just to give a flavour of what, and one thing that angers me as well, and you just mentioned there, voice messages. 10-second voice message is fine, as in, Pádraig, lovely, I'll see you at 5. But you know when you send somebody a WhatsApp message and they send you back a 2.5-minute voice message? Now, that rankles me because often that happens when you're in a situation where you can't listen back to it and then they think you're just being rude as well. But we're starting to get into my inner psyche here as well. But what's really agitating listeners of the Midlands? One person says, I'd say it's the younger generation that are less tolerant. The older generation are used to hardship. The mobile phone is a curse at times. I was in a waiting room yesterday and everyone was on their phone except myself. It's horrible. Ina, I think I would tend to agree with you that conversations on trains appear to be a thing of the past as well. Somebody else, John mentioned the weather. Somebody else says the full moon affecting people's moods. That's actually, I think, well proven over the years as well. Somebody says in regards to junk mail, why get angry about junk mail? We've got bins. But see, you could have a note on your door saying no junk mail and you're still getting it. I've lots of texts to come back to actually around the facial features and the face reading from the elections, and I'll touch on them a bit later in the show too. But we're getting a snippet of what is angering people as well. Other people texting in saying a topic that we should discuss is how few politicians are going door to door. That all of them are just out posting literature. So again, that's kind of junk mail posters. Why aren't they coming to our doors? Not given that face-to-face engagement. That's one listener's view on that as well. There's loads of things. One person's texted in saying, you know, we should stop giving out about migrants because they're just seeking a better future. Stop getting so angry about it and maybe look at what we can do in our communities as well. So mobile phones clearly a factor as well. Can this be reversed, or is this just the way we're going, Pádraig, and we just have to learn to adapt to it?
I think there's two sides to this. And there's the adaptation side of it, because technology is moving on. And then there's also the art of talking to strangers. And there is so a lot of my work now is with multinationals based out of Dublin and abroad, where they're saying we have now got new graduates who are working with us, be they in accounting firms, consulting firms, technology firms. And they're coming in and they have been trained or they have gone through their academic career during COVID. And they haven't had necessarily a whole host of client-facing roles. And their education has been stunted, and their social development has been stunted by the onset of COVID, which is they're just a victim of circumstance. This isn't any disparaging on any generation or any age group. This is just what happens. This is an explanation of why some of those changes in behavior are being seen. So one of the things that was a really good issue of the Economist, actually, that came out a few weeks ago, this was completely devoted to this art of talking to strangers. And are we losing that art of talking to strangers? And how can we ease ourselves into the moment. And one of the things that I consistently get asked is there value in something like small talk? And, it sounds like an insignificant thing, but time and time again, you have all of these organizations, people in themselves wondering, does small talk play a role? And it plays a huge role. Even something as benign as talking about the weather, Ronan, gives you an opportunity to connect with another person, because usually we don't care that much about the weather. It's not about the weather. It's about the human connection. And one of the two things that we usually, when we walk away from talking with a stranger or talking with somebody who we don't know that well, the two things we say is, oh man, why did I say that? Why did I put my foot in it? And then the second thing we say is, why didn't I say something? So what talking about the weather or small talk or, just polite conversation does is it opens up the door to human connection without really going into any great detail, without trying to solve the world's problems. And what it does is it gives you an opportunity to practice that connection with other people, that, chatting without agenda that we used to do on trains, that we do on the street. It's one of my favourite things to do. And I always encourage people to practice it. Use those occasions where you're in the workplace, where you're in a social setting, to just experiment, talk with people, see what it's like. Because I think we've, to a lot of degrees, fallen out of that habit. And that has kind of lingered.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are often more open to that than you might even think, when you get over that initial kind of shyness or reluctance as well. John Cusack, you want to come in on that point? We're talking about small talk, just that basic conversation with people.
I mean, that's where it's all lost. And I would see, particularly in the shopping centre on a Friday, I don't do any emails or anything on a Friday. I spend my day walking around the centre from early morning, speaking to people who come in on a Friday. The simple hello, they're sitting on a bench. And there's a few people who go around in the centre on a daily basis. And I know some people will be dodging the bullet when they see them coming. But it's amazing just to have that conversation, because I grew up in an era, I was born in 1969, so that's my age.
Jeez.
And you're not too far behind me, Ronan. But I was born up, we all had, you met people, you had a conversation. And I was in a shop this morning here in Tullamore, and there was a great character in front of me. And he went up to the counter and he just said to the young fellow, will you carry out that coffee there for me? And the young fellow just stood looking at him. He didn't even know what to say to him. And instead of saying, oh yeah, here, come on. But sometimes if you watch the queues in the post office or go down to the credit union in the queue, and next thing how many of us went to the queue and turned around and came back out? But if you just stand in that queue, and it's just unbelievable who you'll strike up a conversation with. Myself and my wife come out on a Saturday night into Tullamore, and we found over the last 12 months that the amount of new people that you meet, people that you wouldn't dream of striking up a conversation with, but the majority of people don't know how to have a conversation because we refer to the phone for something, or something comes up and we actually don't know how to talk anymore. And I think that's where the art starts in school. Go back to the school again, because it's with our young people. Have we room for conversation? Come into the room. It doesn't matter what you talk about. Like, what will the topic of conversation be in Offaly today? Well, everybody's talking about this evening. Tomorrow, it'll be something else. And that's where we need... I love playing 25. I play coming up to Christmas, and I play a 9. The characters that'll be at that table. You get up the next morning, you'll be actually laughing about what happened. Now, we have a group of guys, we call ourselves the Boys Club. We meet nearly every day, and we don't allow the phones. And it's strictly in that period of half hour, 40 minutes. And on a Monday morning, the crack we have, and the laugh that you have. But it is a talk out of nothing. It's just a proper... And just one other thing, how many of us wave to anybody in the morning in the cars? Yeah. I'm not saying we know everybody, but I found lately, nobody waves to anybody.
There's kind of a rule of thumb, if it's a quiet road and you don't know
but even... No, I understand that, but nobody even gives way anymore. Even if you're... how many of us pull up at a junction and let somebody back out? How many of us will be in a small town and somebody's trying to get out, or somebody wants to cross the road? And I even see people in the shopping centre where somebody elderly or maybe with a buggy or something coming in, people just plough out. Nobody stands back. And if you stand and watch... last week I did it, 2 or 3 people who were walking down the mall on their phone. And they, oh God, sorry. But they didn't...
and stepping out in front of traffic sometimes, or all that time. I got it. Your point on the young people, actually. I had 3 16-year-old girls on the show on Tuesday night on the business show, TY entrepreneurs. They raise money, set up a company selling GA shorts, and they're after donating €4,230 to accessible council.
We had them in the centre.
Yeah, and you want to hear them talking. Yes. And I actually think, and being at the Student Enterprise Awards there a couple of weeks back with Midlands Today, I think the teenagers, they've copped on to the whole thing around algorithms, TikTok. I think they're beginning to see through it all. And I think what's going to emerge is this fantastic generation. Pádraig Walsh, would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, agreed, Ronan. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. I think things are going to change. John mentioned characters. I'm going to bring another character into this conversation, a man called Alan Mitchell, formerly of Al's Fish Shop in Port Arlington. And if ever there was a man who knew how to do a customer-facing role, it's Al. He's still selling fish, of course. Good morning, Alan.
Morning. Ronan, how are you getting on?
Good now, and yourself, Alan. In all your years dealing with the public as well, have you noticed any change out there?
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes, all right. But I find, listening to your listeners there, Ronan, it's kind of strange. It hits on a lot of things that happened to me recently as well. I was at a doctor's surgery there not too long ago, on Monday actually, getting stitches out. And I sat in the waiting room, and everybody was on their phone. And I just cracked a joke. I said, Jesus Christ, lads, I forgot my phone. And then it sparked up a conversation between everyone. They all put down their phones and started talking. It was kind of different. But then on the other thing, the candidates going around, like we had a candidate here in Port Arlington, Joey Kennedy, and he's a really nice lad. He's very young, 19 years of age, fresh, young lad. And he was canvassing at a door, and someone threw a mug of tea at him, which was crazy. I mean, that was anger. But then the other thing is, when you're talking about children, teenagers nowadays, but have you ever stopped? Like, people walk past them every day. They're afraid of teenagers. They're intimidated. They seem to be taller. They seem to be eating different food. They seem to be massive, and people are afraid of them, they just say hello, and then, that's the way it is. But I think we have to embrace the children, not like push them to the side the way it seems to be going.
So many of them have so much going for them now. Like, if you look at the amount of, particularly say, young girls now that are playing sports and involved, and there is a lot of activities out across many towns. Is there more we can do? Undoubtedly as well. I just got a really interesting text I'm going to bring to your attention here. A listener has texted us in, and they've sent me a page of, I think it's the Westmeath Examiner from April 1994, and it says, when people had nothing. But it says, look at all the entertainment that was on. Now in 2024, look at what we have. Not a thing, no nightclubs, no nightlife. And it's like a government want us going out during the day only. Same for concerts in Dublin, doors open at 5:30 p.m. That's interesting, because I suppose all these curfews and time limits. But actually, if you click on the picture there, you see things like Francis Black, you had Stringfellows nightclub. And actually, I need to zoom in and more. But the full page of the paper dedicated to places to go and things to do and great events. John Cusack is nodding in approval here.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think that there is a bit of a re-insurgence back to the 80s again, and you will see with different things popping up. We have an over-30s disco in Tullamore next Saturday evening in the Phoenix. But all that stuff is starting to happen again. But the young people, when I remember back in the 90s, we had the amount of discos everywhere. There was no phones. Young people got in, they had a great night. There might be the odd old scrap over who's going with who or shifting who or whatever.
That was the Clonaslee boys, in fairness.
Oh no, trying to see him on Mellick. But we had great times. But we all learned how to communicate. Like, if you send, nobody wants to, even if you look at, and I think it reciprocates from if you look at it, and just take an example, our banking system, you go into the bank now, you get somebody standing behind the counter, please don't come near me, I can't answer your question.
I'm laughing, the listener has texted in and said, no, there was 2 pages of entertainment notices. So like, there was.
But there was, though. I mean, you had so many places to go, so many things to do, and people genuinely integrated with one another. Like, I even, you see young people moving around, and the art of conversation needs to be struck up again. That fire needs to be struck up again. But it starts with people striking out that conversation, and sometimes you're nearly afraid now to say hello to somebody in case, what do you want, or why are you speaking to me, and it can be the difference of somebody's day if you just say that simple hello. And I think that thing with the phone is priceless.
Yeah, another listener is texting her to say that, like, young people, they are chatty and friendly. Yeah. I agree as well. So the previous generation didn't have hardship, in inverted commas, cheap mortgages, cheap cars. My insurance is a quarter if the price of a new car in 1990. So, like, again, and absolutely, I mean, that'd be a reason for people to get angry too about, there's so much talk about a generation that maybe don't see themselves actually owning a house or owning property, which is, again, it's kind of part of those fundamentals of being. Al, the future though is bright, you reckon? Like, people are still busy, they're coming into your shops. they're in the shopping centres there, they're buying fish, they're going to the Sulliseco market, everything else. Yeah.
It's great. And young people are cooking a lot now. They're more adventurous. Like I'd have a fish counter there full of I'd have squid, octopus, they're just so excited when they come in. Yeah, it's great to see. There's just kids coming from Monasterevin, and they're coming in. They're looking at this fish counter and they're amazed. They want to poke the eyes, of the fish. They're just fascinated by the fish counter. You know what I mean? And this is what they need. They need to see food being. Another thing is, there needs to be more education in school about how to cook food as well. Preparing food, like how you can turn a chicken into 3 dinners, and or fish. I should be plugging my fish, but anyway. But you know what I'm trying to say.
I do.
But leftover dinners. Like, what can you do with it? You can do something else. Instead,
and
there's a lot of this thing.
And it in itself can be a conversation starter. And actually, that's what's jumping out here, and even from listener texts, it's that social connection piece and. A problem shared is a problem halved kind of thing, that old adage that rings true as well. In terms of impatience, maybe sleeping on an issue rather than being aggressive and confronting straight away.
Yeah, and it's great. Like, if you engage with people and chat with people, you'll get it back. But if there's no engagement, you're not going to get anything back, and that's the whole thing. That's the secret. You need to talk to people.
The message is go into your fish shop and start poking the eyes of the fish. Alan Mitchell, thank you so much for that this morning, and to Pádraig Walsh there from Actualise Academy as well. I'm just going to bring you to one text. If you're heading for Kilkenny this evening, don't make yourself angry and impatient, because the Gardaí have been issuing many notifications around the traffic as well. And Graham Kavanagh has been in touch with me as well, just to say to people to listen to the advice there from Inspector Donoghue on the most effective way to get to and from the game. Avoid Doro-Ballyragged route as roadworks on N77, and there will be delays. Coming from West Offaly direction, head for Rathdowney, Johnstown, or coming from Mid and North Offaly direction, head for Mount Mellick and then Stradbally. So look, there's lots of advice online there, particularly across social media, around what the Gardaí are asking us to do as well. John Cusack, I've got to let you go now as well. Thank you so much for dropping in, and
you're very welcome,
keep up
Ronan.
the art of that conversation.
Definitely.
And you're going to cheer for Offaly tonight, but
of course
you'll be
I am.
for Laois next week.
Up who fall you.
Good man, John. No truer word said. Time for a short break. After that, is congestion in Athlone driving shoppers to neighbouring towns?
Saturday View on Midlands 103, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcloonEnergy.com.
Maria has just texted in to say she was in a supermarket yesterday, and the person behind the till was talking to a work colleague about their birthday, never asked if she wanted a receipt, just handed it to her, no conversation. She says she's enjoying the conversation around increasing chatting and social connection to try and get, reduce impatience and reduce anger across society. Thanks to John Cusack. John is on air actually from 10 p.m. to 12 on Monday night, bringing you the best of power ballads too, so have a listen in for that. But before I go this morning, I want to go across to Athlone quickly to Tommy Hogan, the CEO of Athlone Chamber, because Ray Lennon, who's a local election candidate, has suggested that traffic congestion is causing shoppers to go to neighbouring towns. Tommy, is that the case on the ground?
Good morning, Ronan. Thank you for having me on. It depends who you speak to, really, Ronan. A number of the retailers I've spoken to have said that their footfall is up and that their takings are up. So I guess it depends who you speak to and what angle you want to put on it. It's undeniable there are some traffic issues in the town, but there's a lot of reasons for that. We have a very significant investment in the main drainage scheme here, which is very necessary to future-proof Athlone for a population in excess of 30,000. It's a €114 million investment, and that's going to lead to inevitable disruption and delays. I know we have a new traffic light system put in, and there's a bed-in period there while they try to iron out any teething issues. So it's undeniable we have some traffic issues, but again, it depends who you speak to in relation to retail issues.
Undoubtedly something the Chamber is making many representations on and trying to lobby the various bodies, at least to try and get a date for when all of this will come to an end.
Yeah. You're right there, Ron. We've had some very constructive engagements with the executive of Westmeath County Council. We had a very frank and honest discussion with them in April. A lot of suggestions were made and the thoughts and needs of various stakeholders were conveyed, and we'll continue to have those dialogues. And without those dialogues, there won't be a constructive engagement and outcomes. So, we've made a number of representations. We've made a submission to the Joint Urban Area Plan as well, and traffic was one of the issues we raised, and we made a couple of suggestions on that.
Fantastic, because in fairness, I was in Athlone recently, and the new street enhancement, it looks really nice. You can see how it'll bring that pedestrian football back in. Ultimately, patience is key to it, and trying to come up with it. I suppose in a show when we speak a lot about impatience and people getting angry and stuff like that, it'll be nice to see an end to this and to make sure that everybody is benefiting from all these works.
You're right, Ronan. There's so many things, so many positives for Athlone, and the new streetscape is going to look fantastic. It's going to be a lovely street to walk on and shop on. And there's so many other positives for Athlone as well. We have the second largest pharmaceutical company in the world coming to Monksland. And in my view, this is our intel. This is going to be a several decade investment on the behalf of Novo Nordisk. It amazes me what the possibilities that Athlone has. We're a regional growth centre, and I think we'd be the envy of a lot of towns in the Midlands.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, because that the growth and even population and footfall into the towns will be huge in that. Tommy, looks fantastic. Thank you for coming on and letting people know that this is in hand. The Chamber and other groups are making representations on it, and time will tell as well. Tommy Hogan, thank you so much. Another proud Offaly man, undoubtedly trying on the green, white and gold this evening to shout for his native county. That's it from me from Saturday Review this morning. Thank you for all your texts as always. It's been an absolute pleasure. It looks like people of the Midlands, we want conversation. We want to get back out there talking to people. So do you know what? Let's that be your motto for the bank holiday weekend. Just say hello to somebody in the queue, talk to somebody, put the phone down for a while, enjoy their company. I'll talk to you all shortly.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com. Midlands 1